Hello and welcome to Female Cricket Live. The sixth match of the 12th edition of ICC Women's Cricket World Cup was played today between Australia and Pakistan. The match was played at the Bay Oval in Mount Maunganui. Winning the toss and electing to bowl first, Australia restricted Pakistan to a modest score of 190 for 6 in 50 overs. For Pakistan, captain Bisma Maroof top scored with an unbeaten 78 of 122 balls and received good support from Alia Riaz, who chipped in with 53 runs. For Australia, it was their leg spinner Alana King who was the pick of the bowlers as she picked up 2 for 24 in her 9 overs. In reply, Australia chased down the target with ease as they completed the formalities in just 34.4 overs, winning the match by 7 wickets. Their opening batter Elisa Healy top-scored with 72 runs off 79 balls to lead the run chase from the front. While for Pakistan, it was the spin twins in Omema Sohail and Nashra Sandhu who were among the wickets, with Sohail picking up 2 and Sandhu striking with 1. So after these two matches that Australia and Pakistan have played, we can see that Australia have won both the matches in their World Cup campaign so far, while Pakistan have lost both the matches in this World Cup. So this was in brief the roundup of what happened in the match today between Pakistan and Australia. Now we have an exciting contest ahead of us that is going to be played tomorrow, that is 9th of March. It is going to be played between West Indies and England. While West Indies have won their first match against the hosts New Zealand, England, on the other hand, have suffered a defeat at the hands of their Ashes rivals Australia. So, to talk more about what could possibly happen in the match between West Indies and England, I have with me Krisania Young, Anand Ramprasad, Beth Barrett-Wild, Dhanush Lavanya, and Urvi Shah. So, Krisania Young is a Caribbean cricket writer, cricket analyst, and chief editor at Mostly Cricket. Anand Ramprasad is a columnist at Trinidad Guardian and also has a specialization in sociology of sport. Beth Barrett-Wild is the head of the 100 Women's Competition and Female Engagement at the ECB, which is the England and Wales Cricket Board. Dhanush Lavanya is a content writer at Female Cricket, and Urvi Shah is a mental health facilitator who is pursuing her master's in sports psychology, and she's an avid cricket follower and runs her own blog by the name Beyond the Matches. So I welcome all of you to Female Cricket Live.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you.
Great. All right. So it is wonderful to have a full house today. So looking forward to an interesting discussion with respect to West Indies and England, who are going to face off against each other tomorrow. All right. So Beth, to begin with you, England played their first match, rather the World Cup opener against their Ashes rivals Australia. More than 600 runs were scored in that match. It was an exciting contest, we can say. England finally fell short of just 12 runs. There were some positives from the England side. Nat Silver contributing with both bat and ball. Tammy Beaumont right at the top of the order. It was good to see Brunt and Strupsole taking the new ball. Despite the result, I'm sure there were many positives. So, your first thoughts on England's match against Australia and what could be the takeaways that they'll take ahead in this tournament?
Yeah, look, I think the players will be disappointed not to get over the line in that game. I think you mentioned there, over 600 runs scored across the 100 overs. That's an incredibly exciting game of cricket. And look, I think the players will be hurting that they didn't quite manage to get over the line. But I think definitely some positives to take. I think, Nat Sivers really announced herself as a world-class all-rounder there. I think her performance in particular, a real standout. I mean, 109 not out off 85 balls. That's, proper quality. And look, I think Australia are a very strong team. Like we saw that through the Women's Ashes series prior to the Women's World Cup. They're going to be very difficult to beat. But what I would say is I think that gap isn't quite as big as people think maybe it is. I think they are beatable. I think, we've shown there in that match that you can get runs against them. To score nearly 300 in reply, it would have been a record run chase. So look, lots of positives to take away. And I think the players, whilst they'll have been disappointed about that, I think they'll be ready to bounce back against the West Indies later this evening in the UK and tomorrow in New Zealand. So, it's just set the competition up brilliantly, though, hasn't it? I've been absolutely blown away by some of the cricket that's been played so far and the sort of the excitement across all of the matches happened today. So, I think we're in for a real belter of a competition.
Krisania, when it comes to England, certainly they have suffered a loss. A 12-run defeat is a thing they are coming into this game against New Zealand. against West Indies. I'm sorry. But for West Indies, it was an outstanding win, a 3-run victory, and it was an excellent match. And we were talking a lot about Hayley Matthews, who was the player of the match at the end of the day, scoring a magnificent 119 and taking 2 wickets with the ball as well. We were impressed with it, but we expected her to come in the middle order, but she opened the batting. How surprised were you with that?
It in hindsight, not very surprised because it was a mystery after the injury to Rashada Williams in the warm-up encounter. It was a mystery why the West Indies went with Alia Aline at the top. Looking back, I'm thinking they did not want to give away their hand to say that if it's not Rashada Williams, then it would have been Hayley Matthews coming at the top. But there aren't many other options, so it wasn't really surprising. I think I read something where Haley said that she was very edgy, moving back up the order, having done so. She's done well at number 5, but it was a fantastic innings. She anchored and she had pieces around her, half century partnerships with Stefani Taylor, Shadi Nation, and Shemaine Campbell. The West Indies scored, I think, what is their highest score in this new regime. It was a very all round batting performance, and they can only build on it.
Hi, so I'm just going to put this question out to all three of you together. So, as we know that England and West Indies have come out from a very close game when they face Australia and New Zealand, respectively. So, what do you think would be the changes, or would they go with the same approach in terms of their batting and bowling in the next game for tomorrow?
Who wants to go?
You can go ahead.
Dr. Anand can start.
Oh no, after you. Crack on.
Okay, I think West Indies will go with the same team that they would have played against New Zealand. There's no need to change the order. So I think they would go with the same team that they played against New Zealand.
Yeah, I think for England as well, I'd be surprised if there were too many changes. I think they actually, especially in the batting department, to score nearly 300 runs and to chase that total down nearly, I don't think there'll be too many changes. I think it's still early days as well in terms of the competition. This will only be the second game. So I think they'll back themselves to bounce back strongly. So, let's wait and see. But I'd imagine it would be, a pretty similar lineup, I'd have thought.
I mean, if it's not broken, don't change it. But if the West Indies were to make a change, I would go with Afi Fletcher with all those right-handers in the English lineup. She's not been said. She's just played the one international since coming back, and then the 2 warm-up games, which she didn't have a huge impact. But if the West Indies were to make a change, I would go with Afi Fletcher.
I think just on the point about Hayley Matthews earlier as well, so she played over in the 100 last summer for Welsh Fire. And she was just incredible. I think, she's a player that's been around for a long time now, really announced herself in the West Indies setup in that T20 World Cup victory a few years ago now. And from what I've seen over the last 18 months, she looks like she's just, I don't know, really come of age. I was very, very impressed with her through the 100 last year for Welsh Fire. And I think that form, she's in the form of her life. So I guess, from a personal perspective, I hope she has a little stumble against England later on today. But I'm really excited about watching her play. And she's due to come back and play in the 100 again this year. So she's one of those players that when you're watching a match, you're just like, I want to watch Hayley Matthews back, definitely.
Absolutely, Beth. Can't agree more with you that Hayley Matthews has definitely come of age. She's just 23 years old, but she plays with some maturity and class.
She's been around a while, 23 years old. Wow. Well, she's got her best years ahead of her, I think. Yeah. She's looking world class.
So with regards to Hayley Matthews, I have some good news as well as bad news. So it is bad news for West Indian people who are out here in Dr. Anand and Krisania, and good news for you, Beth, because when I was seeing the averages that these batters have against England, the top 4 of West Indian batters, so Hayley Matthews averages just 16.5 against England, which is her lowest among other teams. So my question to you, Dr. Anand, is I looked at the top 4 batters of West Indies, Kendra Doughton, Hayley Matthews, Kaisia Knight, and of course the captain Stefani Taylor, and all average under 20 against England. So, how much impact will this have going into the match tomorrow for these players?
I think they would be cognizant of their past experience against England, but I think they would also be riding on the momentum of the game against New Zealand and backing themselves to do well in this game against England tomorrow. So I think they, as much as they will be cognizant of Soul as well as Brunt, Nat Siver, etc., I think they would be riding more on the success of the game against New Zealand and backing themselves to perform tomorrow with the bat.
Beth, I had when I saw the match between Australia and England. England went in with just five bowlers. Everyone bowled their 10 overs quota, and the combination was 4-1, four seamers and one spinner with Sophie Eccleston. Do you see a change coming into this game because Hamilton was a completely different wicket and Dunedin is completely a different wicket altogether? And Amy Satterthwaite, who played in Dunedin against Bangladesh yesterday, she took a three-wicket haul against them, and she's an off spinner. So, do you see an extra spinner coming in for Kate Cross, who went for 62 in 10 overs?
Yeah, look, I think there's maybe an option. We've got Charlie Dean in our squad who made her her ODI debut recently. So she certainly could be somebody that could come in and just give us an extra spin option. I'm just looking at the bowlers actually. So it doesn't look like Heather bowled herself in that match against Australia either. And she can obviously she can bowl a little bit of off spin too. So that might be one change. I mean, I think on Kate Cross, like she has been a very, very, very consistent player for England, especially in the ODI format actually over the last kind of 18 to 24 months. And look, I think anybody's allowed to have a bit of an off day. I think I'd still back Kate to deliver in the match later today. But I guess there is that option in the squad to perhaps bring somebody like Charlie Dean in. She can also do a little bit with the bat. So that could happen. That especially if they might just have a look at conditions and just see whether they want to play that extra spinner.
Yeah, so I would like to just keep the conversation going here. We know that sometimes bowling unit can fail to take early wickets, and there will be a lot of runs on board for the teams to chase. So when it comes to batting, we know that Hayley Matthews and Nat Siver both come off after a century in their previous game, making an impact on the team performance. And also, they were pretty much like the lone wolf standing strong on the crease while there were wickets going on the other end. So, how do you feel that when it comes to batting, both the teams can actually have some strong lineup and some strong performances at the other end to support these two in the upcoming game tomorrow?
I
We
guess
can start
Christina
with,
can go with it.
yeah, we can start with Christiana.
Okay, thank you. I actually think that there was support. To be honest, you look at this West Indies team, they've not been great. So we have to break it up. And when we're looking what has happened under Courtney Welch, they are scoring more, they're scoring faster, they're batting longer. So this is the first time under Courtney Welch that West Indies has had three half-century partnerships. So Taylor with Matthews, half-century partnership. Again, Campbell with Matthews, half-century partnership. Nation with Matthews, half-century partnership. So I do think there was support. No one else got a half-century. Obviously, Haley was the only one who scored a century. But I think if you have three consecutive half-century partnerships, you have to say that there was support. So the West Indies will take confidence from that, especially because it came from their lower middle order as well.
Okay. So there's no doubt, as Chrisania mentioned, that West Indies is a batting powerhouse. And if they are on song, we know what damage they can do thanks to Deandra Doughton, Stephanie Taylor, and Hayley Matthews, of course. So my question to you, Beth, do we have Beth? Yes. Okay. So my question to you, Beth, is England are the defending champions, and we all know how important this World Cup is going to be because defending champions may
Judy,
be
there
under
is
some.
Beth isn't in the chat. She has left it. She has left a message out there.
Okay, okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, so maybe I can pose my question to Dr. Anand. Okay, so Dr. Anand, if you can talk us to about the West Indian bowling, how impactful they can be going into the match against England, because we know that England has some good batters in their lineup. Tammy Beaumont, of course, what we saw in the last match that she did against Australia, then Nat Silver, unbeaten century, Heather Knight, of course, the captain. So, how do you think the West Indian bowlers can keep these English batters at bay?
Well, I think looking ahead at the game, the first thing that the bowlers would need to do is be able to bowl according to the field that is set for each of the batters. So keeping the ball on one side of the wicket, not giving the English batters a lot of width on the offside, and not too short as well, because they got good cutters and good pullers of the ball. So it's all about keeping that ball just short of a good length, on or off on the off stump, or on the stump itself, not too much width and nothing too short because of the strength of the English batters. So that would be the for the seamers. For the spinners, again, you don't want to be over pitching, because again the English batters have the ability to take the play the slog sweep, go over cover, go over extra cover. So it's all about understanding each of the batter and bowling in a manner in which you can keep stifle runs and put pressure on them.
Chrysania, as far as the performance from Deandra Doughton is concerned, she is the superstar at the end of the day in the first match. She was excellent with her ball in the final over. But if we see the match, she just bowled those 5 deliveries in the final over. Aside from that, she wasn't in the bowling attack at all. Do you see her becoming more regular? I feel that she can be a player who can come in those middle overs and reduce the run rate and make sure that there are wickets taken at regular intervals as well. As at the end of the day, she is one of the best players in the side, one of the most experienced. Do you see her coming early and bowling more overs?
The West Indies, they've tried it. I think with the shoulder injury, and when she came back, they've tried to just ease her into bowling on and off, but it just did not work out. And they got to a place where they were almost complete, where they weren't missing her. Not to say that she wouldn't add an X factor, but the games went on and we weren't saying, oh, if we had Deandra bowling. I think if the West Indies missed her anywhere, it would have been in the final overs, in the death overs, which she proved in the first encounter. And I think the most amazing thing about that is that they said that she was not even practicing in the nets. So I don't think that the West Indies had any plans for Deandra to become a regular. I don't know if this changes it, if what happened in the first encounter will change it. I don't think so, because I think they will want to protect her, right, and what she can offer with the bat. I think they will stay as is. I don't think she will become a regular. It's yet to be seen, but I don't think so.
Okay, so my question is to Dr. Anand. Sir, as we know that teams usually prefer having matches like in a short span of gap when it comes to big leagues. So, how do you feel about the gap that England and West Indies both are having between their first two games? So, do you feel that will have an impact, like a positive or a negative one, when it comes to performing after a break of five, I think around 4 or 5 days? So, what are
Yes,
your thoughts on that?
yes. I looked at it, and it can offer both a plus and a negative. The plus is that it gives the team time to work on whatever weaknesses they may have identified in their game. It would have given West Indies also the opportunity to take a look at England game against Australia and worked out what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And on the other hand, especially having won against New Zealand, they would have probably preferred to play much earlier to ride on that momentum. But I think it's on either side. There are plus, but there are also some negatives. But I think at the end of the day, the West Indies will be ready for the game tomorrow, and riding on that momentum of that win over New Zealand.
So, taking up from where Dr. Anand has left Krisania, how do you think would have the West Indian team used this 5 day break? Would they have just taken the time off, or would they have worked on some of the things that they missed out during the New Zealand match?
And I think, well, I agree with Doctor, and the same that goes for the West Indies will go for England, because they only played a day after the West Indies. But I do think that they did work on, they would have worked on. The fielding, it was a mess to say the least. The bowlers did their jobs, the fielders let them down. So I think they would have been hard on themselves. They would not want to make the same mistake, especially with this England team. And no, I think they would have taken positives from creating the chances to take so many. They created what? So many chances. They took 10 wickets and they still did not take a lot of the chances that they created. So I think they would have been in the field working hard so as not to make the same mistakes again.
Absolutely. There were a lot of drop catches, especially from Chanel Henry. If I'm not wrong, she dropped like two, three catches in the game. And moving on, Dr. Anand, England's batting unit is maybe second best after Australia, we can say, in this tournament. And seeing the form of Nathalie Siva, who has been excellent, she has scored back-to-back hundreds in a fashion because she scored 100 in the warm-up games as well. She scored 100 in the first match as well. But and to support her, there is Tammy Baymount in the opener, who has been like the best England player over the last 5 years. She was even nominated for the ICC Player of the Year in ODI format in 2021. These two players are really big for them. And how do you see West Indies bowling unit's strategy to these big guns?
Well, both players are very good all-round players, and that's the strength that they bring to the English team, that they can play all around the wicket. And I think the bowlers would have used the last 5 days. I think this is going to be one of the advantage of the break as well, to have taken a look closely at that game between England and Australia, and to look at where Siver and Beaumont strengths are, and also to see how best they can negate it. But just to add to the strength of the England batting as well, when I compare both teams, you see greater depth in the England batting. When you have Sophia Dunkley coming in at number 7, and then you have Brunt and Stropsole, etc. So I think it's going to be very, very critical that our bowlers, as well as fielders, are on their A game from ball one to keep, if England bats first, if they are setting, to keep them under pressure so that the score that they set is not a huge score. And if West Indies is chasing, um, that they are able to restrict New England to a total that they can get and not have them run away with it. So I think the bowlers will have to be on their A game, but the support of the fielders are going to be equally important. We do not want a repeat of so many drop catches that took place against New Zealand.
Yeah, that's really a point that I would like to ask on. So, when it comes to fielding, Dr. Anand, we say that we need very tight fielding, we need good fielding positions. The bowler needs to be aware about the field placement and everything. So, how important do you think when you are bowling first, if whichever team bowls first tomorrow, will it be because as both the batting units are pretty strong when they are on song? So, how important fielding would be for the team who is bowling first?
Oh, as the saying goes, catches win matches, and I think that will apply in all the games, and no different tomorrow. I think every catch that comes to hand, West Indies have to take it, if from a West Indian perspective, and even half chances have to be converted into catches. That is going to be important. Ground fielding is also going to be very, very important. In addition to the catching, cutting off the twos, restricting singles, restricting to twos as opposed to threes. That fielding pressure is going to add to the bowling, because the bowlers need the support of the fielders. And once they get that, it adds pressure and puts pressure on the batters. So once, if West Indies are bowling first, we want to make sure that in addition to the bowlers being on song, you want the fielders to be equally awake and aware of what is happening so that they can complement each other in their drive to restrict England to a score in which their batters can be comfortable getting.
So if we just look at the head-to-head statistics, right, of both these teams, England and West Indies, out of the 22 matches, England have won 15, West Indies have won 5, and 2 matches ended in no result. So, Crisania, now going into the match tomorrow, which is just less than 6 hours away, 6.5 hours away. So, in our last conversation, I remember that you predicted the score pretty correctly. You had predicted 260, if I'm not wrong, and West Indies went on to score 259, of course, setting a target of 260 to New Zealand. So, I would like to have predictions from you. If West Indies bats first, what could be the score that they post? And if they bowl first, what do you think will be the score that they'll restrict England to?
When we look at the scores at the university over over the last just few one day internationals that the teams were able to complete 50 overs, it's just been around that just above 200. So I think it's going to be a low scoring affair. The only time um there was a run rate above six, it was in that match against that New Zealand one. I think it was the night before last, and it was because of the wet conditions, was it not? So I think that's what played a part. But the run rate has generally been about 4.5. So I think just about 225. I think 230 would be a lot. Anything in excess of 230 would be very difficult to get. I'm predicting. So if the West Indies bat first, they should look to get around 230. If they are bowling first, try and just restrict England to anything below that, just from what the statistics have shown in the last few games.
Dr. Anand, coming into this match, England will be making sure that they get that win back, or they get back to the winning ways, because that loss was pretty heartbreaking, because they were in the game throughout almost for 45 overs, and they just gave up in the last over, last 2-3 overs. So, as you said, West Indies must be in their A game in this game throughout. Do you see any changes coming in the side? Because a couple of players like Alia Allen and a few players didn't perform well, didn't step up well in the first game. Do you see any changes?
No, I think that the selectors would go with the theme that played against New Zealand. And I also want to agree with my colleague that if there are any changes, maybe the temptation to bringing Afi Fletcher, the leg spinner, to add some additional variation to the bowling attack. But other than that, I think they would go with the team that would have won against New Zealand.
Yes, because I think right now they have the services of Anisa Mohammed and Stephanie Taylor, both being
Yes.
off spinners, and Hayley Matthews again being an off spinner. So yes, it could be interesting if Affy Fletcher gets a game who's a leg spinner. Right.
Yes.
So wonderful. It was so before we let you go, Dr. Anand, your predictions. Crisania has given us around a score of 230 if West Indies bats first. So what do you think will West Indies score?
I think if West Indies bat first, I would like a score of 250 plus, given the strength and depth of the English batting lineup, and especially against the game against Australia. Of course, it will be determined a lot on the pitch conditions, but I'm assuming as it's a World Cup, the pitches are going to be prepared in such a way to allow a lot of runs. And if England bats first, I would like a score of anything less than 200. Because of the strength of the English batting, I would prefer that we don't, they are bowled out for less than 200.
Right. Let us see what happens in the match tomorrow between West Indies and England. So, yes, I would take this opportunity to thank Krisania, Dr. Anand, Dhanush, and Urvi for talking to us about this exciting contest that we are going to witness tomorrow. It is going to be between West Indies and England. The match will be played at the University Oval in Dunedin, and it will start at 3:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. So do tune in to catch all the live action on Star Sports and Disney Plus Hotstar. And yes, we'll be back again tomorrow, same time, 8 p.m., to preview the match that will be played on 10th of March, and it is going to be played between India and New Zealand. So do join us for our conversation and send in your questions using hashtag Female Cricket Live. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.